Hello, everybody. I'm Eshan Pokhrel,
And my name is Cameron Cummings.
and today we are here with episode 30 of the PP Political Podcast, and we're here covering the debt ceiling, which has now been reached once again by the United States government. We're just going to talk about what the debt ceiling is, because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but no one really knows what it means, and why it's important, what happens if you hit the debt ceiling, and all that stuff. So, Cameron, just take us through the debt ceiling.
Sure. I guess probably the definition of the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling has kind of been thrown around a lot recently. So the pretty much precise definition of it is the debt ceiling is the limit that the United States is authorized to borrow to meet legal obligations, including Social Security and Medicare. So they also fall under that umbrella of the debt ceiling as well. And hitting that ceiling means that new spending cannot be legally authorized. Therefore, any legislation that requires funding cannot be followed through until the limit is raised.
Yeah.
So obviously, with another election cycle being around the corner, this is going to be another tense battle between Democrats and Republicans to meet their own separate agendas and the agenda of the entire country to either raise or keep the ceiling the same. And if they do, what are they going to cut so they can have enough, how would I say, wiggle room or room to move around with and have money to throw around to use for projects that they either want to do or need to do.
Yeah, the debt ceiling has been it's been a factor in President Biden's presidency already. This is the second time that he's been in a debt ceiling fight, I believe. But the debt ceiling being reached is a milestone. It's been since 1960, which would be what President John F. Kennedy, right? The Congress has had to raise the ceiling 78 times. The Congress has to raise the debt ceiling. It's just a little bit of a political fight. It's going to get raised because otherwise they can't maintain government functions and you will go into shutdown and the global economy will spiral. So you can't really let that happen. So this will be raised. However, the journey is always fun to cover. Lifting the ceiling doesn't really authorize spending completely. It doesn't automatically authorize new spending. What it does is makes you able to pay your current outstanding debts like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, three of the biggest topics in modern political discourse. And again, if the debt ceiling is not raised in time, markets will react to that, get spooked, and the economy, the global economy, not just the United States economy, will likely spiral into recession. So everything's bad if the debt ceiling is not raised. A little bit about this current debt ceiling battle. So the U.S., we hit the debt ceiling January 19th, so it's been about over a week. It's been people knew this was coming. It's not just something that happens. So there was already negotiations going on. I know Speaker McCarthy, he was talking about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Just even before he became speaker, they were talking about it a lot. Secretary Janet Yellen, Secretary of the Treasury, warned Congress that she has to take extraordinary measures to pay bills with the tools she has with the Federal Reserve, and those tools will not last her till after June. So after June, those tools will be exhausted, and then we will be in chaos if nothing happens. So yeah, Cameron, what are your thoughts? I mean, it's a lot going on. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, I mean, with this going on, obviously, like you said, Eshan, it's going to get raised. There's no really thing about it. It's been raised. This will be the 79th or 80th time?
79th.
It's been raised. This will be the 79th time it's been raised since 1960. So pretty much less than once every year, the debt ceiling has been raised. And I think, obviously, to my memory, this is the biggest uproar I've seen since, or that I can personally document. But going through the journey, like you said, is always interesting. Seeing the discourse that's going to happen, and obviously the arguments that's going to happen, or I guess discussions that'll happen because of it, and to see which way it'll go was probably going to be the most interesting part about it.
Yeah. So.
And obviously, if it doesn't, not only will fall into another recession, thousands of Americans will lose jobs, any source of income. And like obviously you said, global markets will go into a massive spiral of just incredible magnitude.
Yeah. All the work done post-COVID will just be undone, really, if actually a standoff occurs and nothing gets passed. So politically,
Undone and some.
yeah, politically, that's what we focus on here. So we're gonna go with that. The Republicans have postured, a lot of the Republicans, not all the Republicans, not even leadership, but many Republicans have postured themselves as pro cuts to Social Security and Medicare. This is a big balancing the budget type thing. And a lot of this was actually put forward by the group of 20 odd congressmen who held back the speaker vote for so long, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. So this actually looked like a real possibility for a while. Of course, President Biden has to authorize this. Speaker McCarthy has to authorize this, so it has to be a joint venture because President Biden is a Democrat. So there was probably no way any huge cuts would come through on Social Security and Medicare. However, Republicans are really hoping for this. Some Republicans are really hoping for this to be the case. And just what are your thoughts? Those are the first. I guess they are big programs, so it makes sense that they would want looking at the sheet. That would be what they want to cut. But
Yeah.
but this is
And I know speaking.
But yeah. Let me just Social Security has a 70% of people don't want cuts to Social Security. It's one of the most unpopular positions to cut Social Security. So what do you think they were thinking? What do you think Republicans were hoping to gain from actually if they were able to cut Social Security?
Honestly, just more funding to projects that they deem to be more worthy than Social Security. Although obviously obviously more than half of Americans do not want that. Or, yeah.
Yeah, 70% don't want it.
Yeah. I know Speaker McCarthy said that he would not touch Social Security or Medicaid, but has not made any other promises regarding other entitlement programs. So what does that entail? What could fall under that massive umbrella? A lot. What could they be particularly gunning for? We don't know yet as of this recording. In the future, in the coming days or weeks, we will eventually find out what those programs are that they want to cut money from. But again, they're using this thing as a ploy to take money from programs they feel are overfunded. And once they do that, the debt ceiling eventually is just going to get raised again. But although a debt ceiling got raised, they have the opportunity and the chance to take money from the programs they found that they deemed unworthy of the amount of money that they got.
Yeah.
And I know President Biden also said that he had stated he would not negotiate over cuts, and Congress must vote to raise the debt ceiling without any caveats at all. Is that going to be is he going to stand particularly firm on that? We don't know for sure. And how firm is he going to stand? Also, we don't really know.
Yeah. I guess President Biden, there's no political argument to cutting Social Security. You're not going to win that battle. Even President Trump has came out, because now he's running for president again. He's actually really starting to campaign a little bit more now. He stopped in Iowa or New Hampshire the other day. But anyways, that's not important. Mm-hmm. Even he came out saying that he can't cut Social Security. It's very unpopular, which it clearly is. This poll that I'm referencing, 70%, is from a week ago. January 21st to January the 24th. So literally a week ago. It's one of the most unpopular things probably across the country. I don't think no politician would survive an election if they were instrumental in cutting Social Security. I think that's just because your core base in almost every district is senior citizens, those who actually reap the benefits of Social Security. So it's just, I don't know why Republicans would go for that as they could go for a lot of that. I know McCarthy has been looking at, he said he's not going to touch Social Security or Medicare, but I know he's been looking at things like unemployment. I think that's one of the ones he's been looking at. There's a lot of different entitlement programs out there. I think it's one that he's been looking at, but Social Security always seems to be
I feel like even unemployment, although it would not be popular at all, it would still be more popular, more favorable. You wouldn't get the 70% unopposed. And obviously, that was from a week ago. Who says that number couldn't be 75% by now of people with Social Security, which pretty much the entire country runs off of at this point.
I think
that could be less popular, and I feel like they could go for more less popular things that only affects, obviously it's going to sound terrible, more marginalized groups where the consensus of people can agree on, or the people that aren't really in need of those programs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
But Social Security is a weird thing. I feel like it's a headline grabber. Because like you said, no one is surviving. If it goes through, it will not. That next election cycle, they might as well just go into hiding. There's no way they're going to survive at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, unemployment, it's just as bad, I feel like, to cut it at this stage of like the United States, but
Yes.
like I think it would be more palatable because you're not cutting aid to like only senior citizens. Just like it's an optics thing, I guess, in the end. So it makes sense
Yes.
that they would go for something like unemployment from a political perspective. That being said, I'm sure President Biden's always been like trying to like posture himself as a bipartisan like negotiator, getting deals done type guy, arbitrator. So I think that him and Speaker McCarthy, who's one of the more moderate, I'd say one of the more moderate members of the House Republican Party, they'll be able to get a deal done. I know President Biden's wanted to strengthen his relationship with McCarthy because your president has to work with your Speaker of the House. There's no way anything's going to get done. If you want to be an effective president or an effective speaker, you need to work with the other one. So it makes sense that they're looking to work together, and I think it's good for honestly the country that they work together. That being said, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think any big cuts are going to come at the end? Because I mean, we know this is going to get raised. There's not a doubt that it won't get raised. I think no one's that blind to just blindly shut the government down here. What do you think's going to happen, though? How do you think it's going to end?
I feel like already just pretty much getting out of all the COVID stuff that President Biden had to go into. Shut down the country is something I think that's the last thing not only him, anybody wants. What do I think the big thing is going to come out of this? Major cuts. It's going to be programs that the average person doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't use or didn't even think of that we had, that I think they knew they had in the back of their head, but wasn't actively thinking that their tax dollars were going to that. So it'll be like he specifically said, you can put a lot of things into that. Sorry, not special, just other entitlement programs. You can put a lot of things into that umbrella. Social Security, definitely not going to be one of them. Unemployment, obviously, like you said, more palatable. People can probably agree on it more. Not going to happen. Anything major, I doubt there's going to be any major changes, but I think there will be lots of minor changes and a lot of shifts and turns. And even if they don't cut things, they will move money around to other programs. So I don't think anything major will be seen like nationally covered, like they cut Social Security, but smaller programs where they shifted money around, I feel like that could be seen.
Yeah, COVID, actually, that's a good thing you brought up because I didn't even think about it. I just got an alert from the New York Times like a couple minutes ago. The White House is planning to let like public emergency status for the coronavirus end in May. So they're basically winding down the end of COVID being a pandemic, I guess that would mean. Which means, maybe they have programs geared towards COVID. I could see them maybe, I'm not saying they'll do this because, again, I don't really know, but maybe cutting, like, some COVID, like, free COVID tests. Maybe they'll cut those. That's probably some money. Things like that. I know Republicans will probably be in favor for stuff like that, too. So there are little things, I think, if we think about it for a little bit, there's definitely little things, like, they could cut, and it would definitely be more palatable to President Biden, who's already kind of been like, COVID's over. He's been in that camp for a little bit. Even during the campaign, not during the campaign, but like last year, he made some headlines talking about how COVID was the worst part was gone, stuff like that. So I think that could be palatable. Good shout bringing that up. Should we go ahead and turn to the debt real quick, just in general, the American debt?
Yeah.
And my chart that I spent 10 minutes making on Google Sheets with a watermark.
Hey,
so
it's a beautiful chart with the PV political watermark.
Yeah,
I think
we'll put that.
Very good.
We'll put a link in the episode description so you guys can adore the chart. But the debt, like, I feel like the national debt's something everybody knows about. I think people are always talking about, like, we're blank trillion in debt. I remember that being a thing in middle school. We were talking, like, our history teachers would tell us about that in middle school. Right now, we are at about $31.5 trillion in debt. And that's according to the U.S. debt clock, which is actually kind of cool if you haven't checked it out. Just kind of like, it's usdebtclock.org. It's just kind of like a clock of, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's pretty, I'm assuming it's like just like there must be like I don't know how it works, but there's an app too, but it just shows like all the types of debt. United States debt, and then it's like money creation, trade balances, assets per citizen, Social Security, all that stuff. It's pretty chill. It's pretty nice.
And honestly, I know there's been like an outrage, or not outrage, but just more of a discussion about the debt ceiling from one crowd, but another crowd is more just I don't care. Like, it's going to get raised. It's been raised 79 times in the past 60 years. So pretty much pushing twice a year this is being pumped out, or twice every other year the debt ceiling's been raised.
Once a
and
year.
We're so trillions of dollars in debt. People just see it as a number on a screen and not something to actually think about, because 30 trillion, like,
yeah.
Just obviously like human nature, once you get to a number that big, it just doesn't even feel real at that point. So I know a lot of people are in that camp of, does it really matter? It's gonna fix, or obviously let's just print more money crowd. I can feel them just running and coming out of the woodworks with their rants and tirades that they're gonna have about it. But I know it's obviously me and you know personally, and especially looking at this beautiful chart you made in Google Sheets, know at least a fair bit about. Can tell this is an issue, but to the average person,
and yeah,
they just don't really care.
I guess you're not really affected by it unless unless you're affected by inflation, which everybody is right now, to a lesser extent than a couple months ago. To be fair, you don't really feel it. I mean, the debt's not like a pertinent discussion. It's not like a person. Like, I'm not thinking about the debt when I buy, I don't know, coffee or something. So it's like But on this chart, I made this chart. I should have, now I think about it, I should have made it from 1960 to now, because that's when we were talking about earlier. But I made it from 40 years, so 1982 to 2022. That's the last data for fiscal year 2022. All the data's from the Treasury Department. It's legit. Trust me. Anyways, our debt in 1982 was $1,142,034,034,000,000, and now it's and then money, like the official number for 2022 was $30,928,911,613,306.70. I don't know if I said that right, because I've never probably said numbers that high. But the rise, and again, we'll put the chart in the description. The exponential growth of the debt is definitely concerning. I think most people will be concerned by that.
Since the year 2000, so in the past 20 years, it's practically tripled.
And I know balancing the budget was like actually kind of a big thing in the 90s. I think that kind of went out the window with like military spending post 9/11. But like people did try to keep the budget balance. I know President Andrew Jackson got really close to eliminating the national debt when he was in office for a couple of years in a row. So things like that. There used to be like a want to control the national debt. Now, I mean, I don't know how you control $33 or $31 trillion. I guess you can like chip away at it, and that's what I hope we do. Just from like an accounting perspective, it seems like the smart thing to do. But I mean, it's just like looking at this graph. It's just like that rise. It's like you like this. You're not gonna see the video, but you go flat and then you're just like curve exponentially up. It's like a parabola or something, like half a parabola. I don't know, but it is wild. I think
you know what you call half a parabola, Eshan?
What?
Graph.
It's a good point. I didn't think about that. I'm not good at math. That's why we're doing this podcast. Yeah. So the debt. We just want to mention the debt, just like the magnitude of the national debt. People know it's in the trillions, but it's like looking at the graph is just like shocking how high the growth's been, especially over the last 20 years, like you said. Even the last 10 years, like this, it picks up even more. Yeah. So last thing I think we should just pivot to the political ramifications, the most fun. So 2024 is heating up. President Trump is actually campaigning now. President Biden said he's going to run for president again. We'll see. I know Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador to the UN, is looking at running. I think Vice President Mike Pence is looking at running. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, I think also. There's a lot of people on the Republican side. Maybe, obviously, Governor Ron DeSantis. A lot of people out there looking to stake their claim in the new, potentially post-Trump Republican Party. So let's move to that a little bit. Like you said earlier, people aren't really thinking about the national debt like constantly in their lives. But I mean, do you think it's gonna have like if this becomes like a protracted issue, come like in the future, if this isn't like get resolved in the next couple of days, because President Biden and Speaker McCarthy are meeting on Wednesday to try to get something done. If nothing happens and we go into like February, March, April, May,
100% that's going to be people's campaign push.
Yeah. So what do you think? How do you think people what do you think people will respond to this as? Like, does this make this is a question. Who do you think citizens will like take blame to? Do you think they're going to focus on President Biden as the blamed or the House? Like, where do you think the blame will reside? Because I feel like the House has more attention than normal because of the whole speaker thing. Do you think people will actually?
I feel like the House has more attention, by far, especially since the whole House Speaker debacle that happened 3 weeks ago. But honestly, I feel like the blame is going to fall on President Biden. Most things fall onto the president, vice president, unless it's just completely egregious, like the House situation or something going on in the Senate. They kind of were more clean. Not saying they don't get scrutiny for it. They're more clean of it than President Biden. And obviously, he just finished dealing with the COVID stuff, so that's still fresh on people's mind. Honestly, COVID was just 3 years ago. That's still fresh on people's mind, and I feel like the blame's going to fall on him. Especially, people are going to push the blame onto him campaigning since elections are right around the corner. Yeah. So even if it could be 95% on the House, 5% on President Biden, people that are running for president just naturally are going to take that 5% and make it look like the 95% and put it on President Biden, so they can obviously just look better for their campaign running for president.
Yeah, I agree. I think President Biden, he always had that electability, quote unquote, electability quality around him. However, I mean, he inherited a bad economy, which wasn't really President Trump's fault. It was because of COVID. Let's just clarify. We're not blaming President Trump for COVID. But he inherited a bad economy. He's done not a horrible job of bringing it back. I mean, inflation's finally starting to decrease a little bit. We'll see how January's numbers look in a week or two. But despite all that, I don't think there's any way he can survive a second economic crisis. Because, again, if this drags on, this tanks the world. I mean, this is going to be catastrophic because the United States is so embedded into the whole world economy.
It's a world superpower.
Yes, and I still think he can survive another economic breakdown. But do you think that the Democrats, not to make this like a whole election podcast, we'll do that in a couple months. Do you think President Biden, if this happens, do you think they're going to make him like leave the race and have someone like, I don't even know who they'd have, like Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, somebody like that, I don't even know who's left, to like fill in?
Honestly, I know we're not trying to get into election because I am actually excited for that podcast, just sitting down talking about elections. So I'm just going to go side note really quickly and make this as fast as I can. Who are the Democrats going to have to replace Biden? Really, I don't know. Obviously, Republicans, whether favorable or not, whether people like them or even people in their own party like them or not, they're having people come out of the woodworks saying, I want to throw my hat in the ring for president. And although Democrats are doing that, they're not to the scale or to the popularity, or I shouldn't say popularity.
It's just different when you have an incumbent, I guess.
I guess household names, sure. They're not the household names of other Republicans running. Do I feel like they make President Biden drop out? At this stage doing right now, no. If it somehow increasingly gets worse over the next few weeks, possibly. And they may just keep him in until they can find somebody with the name recognition and enough popularity that could rival his, if not take his over.
Yeah, Democrats would love Michelle Obama to start thinking about politics. She polls so well in every poll, but she's not going to run for president. So, I mean, it is what it is. So
but it would be entertaining to see
it would be
Barack Obama go from president to first lady, quote unquote.
First gentleman, I guess, technically.
First gentleman, sure. We'll say that. We'll say that.
I think that's what it is. So let's get back to the debt ceiling a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, I feel like we all know what's going to happen, or we hope we know what's going to happen, because obviously you want the debt ceiling to be raised. I don't care if you're like a spending hawk or you're like a spend the money social program person. We need the debt ceiling to be raised. That's just how our system works currently. I don't care. It doesn't matter if you like it or you support the idea or not. We all should hope it's raised because it could bring. Otherwise, it's not going to be good. And I think there's been like a couple should touch on this real quick. There's been like a couple unorthodox things like suggestions to deal with the debt ceiling. There's something called like the mint the coin movement. That's been around for about 10 years. It's it's the concept that like the Treasury can mint $1 trillion coin, and that way like $1 trillion coins. That way, the debt ceiling never has to be raised.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like they don't have to like keep having this fight. But the Federal Reserve has come out and said this this is a thing. I think it's in 2011. It was when Obama was fighting with the Tea Party people back. Yeah, so this was 2011. That the Federal Reserve came out and like, no, we're not doing that, and they said it again this time. It's been like floated again, but that's just one like fun suggestion for the issue. I don't think that's actually going to happen. It won't happen, because you also have to hope that the markets trust the coin. There's a lot of factors in it. So what's going to happen? It's going to be raised, and there's no shot. But I think in general, the practice of like a fight over the debt ceiling is something that can't be sustained. I feel like for the next 20, 30 years, I feel like it's just going to be yeah. I don't know. I think that's everything I have. I mean, do you have anything else to say about the issue? Like, is there anything you have to mention?
Not about the debt ceiling, but talking about the election has just gotten me excited for the election podcast that we're going to have.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have we'll be doing that, that's for sure. That's going to be fun. We'll bring some of our in-house experts around to have some panel talk, have them come in for a little bit. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to 2024 as well. But for right now, we need to focus on 2023 and this debt ceiling issue. I think we've explained what the debt ceiling is, why it actually matters, or why it can matter at least, the political fight around it, and what it means in the future. I think we did a decent job. We wanted to get a little bit more topical instead of doing the broad topic ones, and hopefully
this is being recorded on the end of January.
January 30th.
And this is the end of the first month of the year, and so much is going on.
Yeah.
With the election cycle right around the corner, 2023 is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to try to do more of these topical episodes when we don't have guests. We're looking at a couple of guests soon. We'll work on getting some big names into the virtual studio, so stay tuned for that. We'll be back next week. We're going to try to get one a week at least. Hey, we're going to keep working on it. We're getting there. I think we're getting more used to college life now, so I think we'll be back at it. I have nothing else to say. Cameron, you have anything else to say?
I think we've said everything we had to about the debt ceiling.
Great. You guys know where to follow us. PBPoliticalAL, pbpolitical.com, Cameron _, what is it? Cameron _DC 2004.
Cameron _DC 2004.
And Eshan.Pokhrel, Instagram. Thank you for listening. Tell all your friends. Give us a 5-star review. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
My name's Cameron Cummings.
And goodbye.